His Excellency Mr. Ali Mohammed Shein, Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Madam President, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great honor and privilege for me to address the 15th Conference of the Parties to the UNFCCC. May I also take this opportunity to congratulate the people and the government of the Royal Kingdom of Denmark for organizing this important conference on climate change, and also a warm welcome accorded to us since our arrival in this beautiful city of Copenhagen. I wish also to recognize the hard work of the UNFCCC Secretariat that has brought us thus here. Madam President, Tanzania supports the statements made by the Group of 77 and China, least developed countries, and Alliance of Small Island States, as well as the position of Africa as articulated in the Nairobi Declaration. Madam President, this conference will test the ability of humanity to collectively address the catastrophe of its own making, which unfortunately is already inflicting unbearable impacts to those most vulnerable developing countries that have not been part of the problem. The world is watching, and millions of voiceless communities are waiting to see how the world leaders gathered here in Copenhagen will rise up to this challenge and provide a lasting solution within the principle of equity and the principle of common but undifferentiated responsibilities. Madam President, the reasons for concern are clear. While my country is grappling with devastating impacts of climate change, the emissions, the heat-trapping gases, is increasing despite the existence of the legally binding Kyoto Protocol to which we all signed. The most recent estimates have shown that human activities are still responsible for annual global increase of carbon emission of around 10 gigatons annually, mainly from the fossils use and cement production in developed countries. This has increased temperatures to levels that are now causing catastrophic impacts. Countries like Tanzania are impacted in all fronts, like extreme drought, devastating floods, and landslides. Diseases like malaria, which are claiming lives in areas they were not prevalent before. Inland lakes are drying at worrying rates. Sea level rise is destroying the coastal infrastructure and leading to seawater intrusion into freshwater wells, erosion of coastal areas, and submergence of small islands. Scientific findings show that the world is heading to self-destruction if action is not taken now. This is why my government is committed in these consultations to obtain a legally binding outcome here at Copenhagen. Madam President, while all countries are willing to rise to this challenge and are committed to continue cooperative actions, developed countries should take the lead. Tanzania believes that the success of Copenhagen will be determined by agreement on the key areas that are enshrined in the science and the principle of equity and common, but differentiated responsibility. We stress that the Kyoto Protocol, the only legally binding instrument addressing climate change, must be sustained beyond the year 2012. Tanzania further emphasizes that developed countries, parties to this important legal instrument, should ensure that commitment to reduce emissions is based on science. While we note with concern that the existing commitments under this instrument that have not been made, its survival and continued implementation is vital and remains as a test of developed countries' ability to take the lead on the problem to which they are primarily responsible. We stress that clear commitment by developed country to reduce the individual and collective emission by at least 45% below their 1990 level is absolutely necessary to ensure that the world will remain a safer place to live. Furthermore, we stress that financial support, capacity building, and technologies must be provided unconditionally to developing countries, including those emerging economies, so as to stimulate nationally appropriate mitigation actions that will allow a greener growth. Madam President, Tanzania is willing to participate in such greener sustainable development, provided technologies, finances, and capacities are available in order to stimulate such actions in the various sectors of economy. Madam President, support for adaptation to the already existing and the envisaged impact climatic change is a prerequisite for any definition of a successful outcome. Funding for adaptation should be adequate, sustainable, and predictable. For this reason, public finance should be the main source to ensure that adaptation is addressed with the level of seriousness expressed by the level of impact themselves. Funding adaptation should be immediate, and the level of funding should be in the tune of 2.5% of the developed country's GNP, consistent with the views and positions expressed by many other African countries. This support should also help developing countries, in particular, the most vulnerable groups among them, to enhance information and communication technology in order to strengthen early warning systems and disaster preparedness. The various innovative financing opportunities and channels could mainly be used to address mitigation actions in the various sectors of economy in developing countries. Let me indicate at this juncture that financing climate change actions generally should be under the guidance of the Convention. There should be a new institutional arrangement that ensures equal representation in the governance structure and that allows developing countries to directly and expeditiously access the resources. Madam President, it is important, however, to underscore the fact that the forestry sector is of particular importance for developing countries. For Tanzania, which has set aside about 3.5 million hectares of our land as forest in various forms, including reserves, it is necessary for the new climate change regime to address deforestation and forest degradation in the context of sustainable development. This should be done by addressing the broader rational development perspective, by enabling developing countries to address energy needs in rural and in urban areas, improving sustainable agriculture production through irrigation, improved seed variety to increase productivity per unit area, and addressing illegal logging by building the capacity of the relevant sectors. Madam President, in conclusion, this conference should come out decisively on climate change. Its devastating impact on helpless communities should guide our consciousness and responsibilities of bequeathing on the coming generations a habitable planet. I sincerely believe that with determination, more political will, and resolve, we could do it. So let us collectively act now. Thank you for your attention.